I have never climbed a mountain. I've been hiking in the mountains, but I've never climbed to the top of a mountain, and so I've never experienced a phenomenon that often dashes hope and drains motivation and triggers exhaustion and even despair. I've never experienced the false summit, but from what I understand, it can be quite a crushing thing. The experience of the false summit is what happens when, from your perspective on the way up the mountain, it appears that you are approaching the top. And so with great excitement and fervor, you push hard to get to the end, only when you reach that crest, you look up and see that the true peak still looms above. What was once hidden from your view, you now see with clear sight, and you see that it is steeper and more difficult than the journey you've already traveled. And many people will call it quits when they experience the false summit. It hits them both physically and emotionally, and it can be easy in that moment to turn around, to walk away, to say no more. And this is the image that surfaced for me as I prayed with our ascent to the holy mountain of Easter and our arrival today at Palm Sunday. Our Mass began with joy, right? The joyful procession, waving of palms, singing of Hosanna. It's like the King has entered his city, and we have come to the beginning of Holy Week. There's this sense of arrival. But all this is quickly shattered by the reading of the Passion. Right? Shouts of Hosanna become cries for crucifixion. Those who had been close to the Lord begin to scatter. A kiss of friendship becomes an act of betrayal, and words promising loyalty become words of denial. And then we see the true path to the summit we desire, the way forged by Jesus, the way of the cross. During this season of Lent, as we've explored this idea of the ascent to the holy mountain of Easter, we've been noting dangers along the way, and a very real danger emerges today. I'm not quite sure exactly what to call it. Maybe it's the danger of the false summit, or the danger of turning away, or maybe simply the danger of suffering. It's the danger that comes when the reality of the cross emerges. It's the danger of thinking I have arrived, only to find that the road gets more difficult. It's the danger that says I didn't sign up for this, or I can't do this anymore. It's that little voice that says that betraying the Lord, or denying him, or abandoning him, any of these is better than suffering, than drinking the chalice that you might have to drink. Right? We saw it in the crowds, but even more tragically, we saw it with Judas, we saw it with Peter, we saw it with the disciples who fled. And these were people who had left everything to follow him. People who were close to him, who walked with him, who lived with him, who witnessed his mighty works. These were the ones that he called friends. And yet they turned away. Now, some of them, by God's grace, repented, they turned back, but not all of them. Some of them went away for good. And so we should not be surprised if we face that temptation when suffering comes. And it's good for us to be aware that turning away is a very real danger. And again, throughout Lent, our proposal has been when we're confronted by danger, we do two things. First, we recall what is true, and second, we ask for particular graces. So what might we recall that is true? It's good to recall that the cross leads to glory. That the cross leads to glory. And Jesus shows us that this is true. He did not rise to the glory of the resurrection by avoiding the suffering of the cross, but rather directly through it. And by doing so, Jesus shows us that the suffering of the cross is not the end. If we can remain faithful in our own suffering, we too will rise. I think that this can be difficult for us to recall and even more difficult for us to believe when we're in the midst of our suffering. And so it's all the more important to recall it. If I am faithful to the Lord in my suffering, I will rise with the Lord to glory. This happens in various ways. Sometimes it happens in this life, right? We can experience joy after suffering or even joy in our suffering when we're united to Christ. And when we unite our suffering to Christ, any of our suffering, all of our suffering, that suffering has redemptive value. It's good for our salvation and the salvation of the world. And then we always have our great hope in heaven, where even the most horrendous of our sufferings will be obliterated by the glory that is to come. So it's good to recall that glory comes by way of suffering, that suffering is not the end. And then I would propose it's good for us to ask for the grace of humility. Humility helps us to see what is true. It helps us to see ourselves truly. And humility helps us to see that what happened to Judas, what happened to Peter, what happened to those disciples, that could happen to me. It prevents me from boasting too much in my own Christian life, my own ability. Humility helps me to rely on the Lord and His mighty power instead of attempting to rely on my own. Humility says, Lord, I cannot do this by myself, but I can do it with you. And humility is especially important when we confront our crosses. And humility opens us to receive from the Lord. And so we might pray something like this: Lord, please give me the gift of humility, especially in my suffering, so that I might lean into you and be lifted up by you. Help me to stay close to you, especially through your passion. Help me to stay close to you and learn from you what you want to teach me about suffering, about obedience, about mercy, about love. And please, Lord, help me to recall what is true, that the cross leads to glory. Please help me to know and believe and experience that the suffering of the cross is not the end. Please help me to remain faithful to you in my suffering, so that I might rise to glory with you. Brothers and sisters, today is not the end of our ascent. In fact, it's the beginning of the steepest stretch, the most difficult part, but also the most powerful and the most transformative. And so today we ask the Lord for the grace we need to never betray or deny or abandon Him when suffering comes. We ask for everything we need to stay close to Jesus in His suffering and in ours, so that we might joyfully arrive together at the holy mountain of Easter.